Hello everybody, welcome back to the ASUS YouTube channel. This is JJ once again, and we're going to be going hands-on once again with another product from one of our partners. So here we've actually got Antec's brand new 1100 series chassis. So this is part of their gaming series. This is actually introducing quite a new number of features in terms of the actual design and some of the internal aspects in terms of flexibility for installation. So we're going to be jumping into this guy and taking a look and see actually what it introduces into this new series chassis. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So now that we've gone ahead and removed our 1100 actually from the box, we're going to go ahead and start taking a look at actually some of the features and some of the layout topology that we have here with the chassis. So first and foremost, actually right here on the very top, we actually have the power and the reset button. And this has actually been positioned actually in a really ideal fashion, because normally when you have your chassis is usually going to be, probably underneath your desk, or it could be on top, but I think actually accessibility wise it makes it a little bit easier. So we have the power and the reset. Moving to the top of the chassis right here, we actually have headphone input, we have microphone input, we have two USB 2 ports, and then here it's great, we have two front USB 3 ports. So this gives us a total of 4 USB 2 ports and these USB 3 ports. And these actually would also work with our boards in supporting the USB 3 boost technology that we have on a lot of our motherboards featuring USB 3. Now, moving down here to the actual front bezel, we actually have some interesting characteristics in regards to the design. So if we actually first look here on kind of the outside, this follows Antec's design implementation of having a honeycomb mesh. And this is great because it allows for a lot of airflow to actually come in through the front of the chassis and be received across the actual motherboard and the core componentry that you have actually installed in the system. So this is a great implementation in terms of giving you more airflow, also for the actual sides of the chassis, which have been expanded out to allow for a little bit more flexibility, both in coolers in terms of the verticality coming out from the base of the motherboard installed, as well as in the actual back side of the board where you sometimes need more room for cabling. So here we can see we have three 5¼ bays. This would be for standard items like maybe like a fan controller, although they actually have, interesting enough, on the inside some fan controller functionality, or your standard kind of optical drives. And we'll actually touch a little bit in terms of the installation a little bit later there. And then here we maintain the honeycomb mesh design, and we actually have 6 toolless options in terms of installing the HDDs or solid state drives. Now, one interesting design note is that we actually can go ahead and pop this off. So we're going to go ahead and actually pop this off. So you just need to apply a little bit of pressure, pull that out, and you can see that you have access right here to the actual front part of the chassis. Now, looking right here on the inside of the actual bezel, Antec has done some interesting things as well. So here you can see we actually have our air filter. It's very easy to remove in terms that you're just going to hold this guy down, and then from there you're going to go ahead and pull it out, and that would allow you to go ahead and clean the air filter. And then from there you pop it back in, and then pretty much when you're done, you're good to go, and you pop it back on. And in terms of removing the items here for the, let's say, optical drives, it's very easy. You would just essentially go ahead and hold these guys in, pull out, and you'd be good to go. We'll go ahead and keep this one out because we're going to install an ODD a little bit later and show you one of the toolless aspects. And moving away from there, we can see right here that these bars actually right here in the back indicate actually the toolless slots for the hard drive. But right here in the front, Antec, in terms of total on this chassis, gives you 7 locations for a fan. Here on the top we have a 200mm fan. And this actually fan has an LED that allows you to control it via actually a switch that's on the back of the chassis that we'll show you. But here we have 2 points of expansion, so you can go ahead and, let's say, install a 120mm fan. For instance, here we have one of their Pro Series 120s. You go ahead and put one here and another one down here. So very easy in terms of go ahead and upgrading the chassis. And here we can see also a nice touch as well. They give you actually threads for using a Phillips screwdriver. I love it when the actual manufacturers take a little bit of time and make this very easy in terms that you could just kind of flex this a little bit. You would stress the actual plating and then allow you to pop that out easily, so you wouldn't really even need a screwdriver. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later when we pop in the ODD, but let's get ready to go ahead and move over to the next side of the chassis. Okay, so we've gone ahead and moved over to the left-hand side of the chassis. Now we can see, for one, of course, we have a large window. This allows you to have a little bit of visibility in terms of having a nice system be able to be showcased, especially if you take advantage of a lot of the cable cutouts that are offered internally to allow you to have a clean and kind of tidy chassis. But one of the really nice things that we have here, as we can see once again maintaining the kind of the honeycomb mesh design, is that they're allowing us to place 220mm fans. They wouldn't be external, but we're just showing you here essentially that you could go ahead and mount 2 120 fans, bring in that air, and additionally cool the system. What we're going to go ahead and do is actually pop this off and show you what that would look like. So we can see right here, we've got the two mounts. In addition, we actually have these nice little silicone grommets. These would go ahead and actually absorb vibration from your fan. So if you were to go ahead and install these on there, it would go ahead and take up that. So it allows you to still maintain a quiet nature, not necessarily as focused in terms of an overall quiet aesthetic as would be kind of like their P series of chassis, but still, with the right fan selections, right fan controls, and the right component choices, you could still have a really well ventilated, high airflow chassis, but still while maintaining a lot of quiet in regards to how the system is running. So we're going to go ahead and set this off to the side. And we're actually going to take a look at one other characteristic here before we actually jump on to the next part of the chassis, and that's another removable air filter right here. And this would actually be for your power supply. Now the great option that we can see right here is that Antec has made this removable air filter accessible without actually having to tilt the air filter. In a lot of chassis, generally to be able to access this, if there's even one, it usually would require you to tilt up the chassis so that you could go ahead and pull it from the back, or essentially have to make some type of adjustment in terms of how it's positioned. But in this type of situation, regardless of where you have it, you can pretty much always just pull this out from the side, clean it, and then put it back in. So it's a very nice accessible design in terms of what they've done here. So from here, we're going to go ahead and jump to the back, take a look at what's unique on the back. Okay, on the back, we can see actually some interesting points in terms of the design implementation. Right here, actually to the left-hand side, this is one great item, is that you see that actually they've maintained kind of the open airflow comb design. And this is great because it gives us actually additional area for air to come in from the actual backside fan that can be mounted actually on the other side that we'll look at shortly. And overall just gives us increased ventilation for our chassis. And this actually also shows you that they've taken the time to actually give you additional room to be able to go ahead and fit in a lot of the cable ties and the PSU connections and a lot of the kind of cable routing that occurs on this back end side of the board, to be able to go ahead and things be much more clean and tidy on the inside of the board. Now here we've got, of course, a standard I/O plate connection panel. So that's where you put your I/O shield. Here we can see that we have a lot of the expansion connectivity. The chassis does support actually 9 expansion slots, so this is great because this would offer optimal expansion capabilities for a board like our P9X79WS board, Rampage 4 Formula, or Rampage 4 Extreme. All those boards actually supporting up to 4-way SLI or 4-way Crossfire. So this type of expansion gives you a lot of flexibility at not only going to complex multiple GPU configurations, but even if you're running SLI and you wanted the most spacing in between to be able to have the optimal airflow, this is a great layout. We can also see that there are actual plates here for the expansion slots also are ventilated, so once again reinforcing kind of the continuous airflow, so being brought in through the front of the chassis and then exiting the back of the chassis. Here we've got a 120mm fan, which of course is replaceable if you were to remove the 4 screws. Right here on the top we have something interesting. This is actually their integrated fan controller, which actually has support to allow you to plug in additional fans. So we could go ahead and take, for instance, take this fan, and when we go ahead and jump onto the inside of the chassis later, we'll show you actually where this plugs in. This allows you to take additional fans, control them internally so that you can adjust the actual speed. Now, while our motherboards actually have excellent fan control and all of them on our X79 series support actually up to 6 fan headers, this is a nice option for maybe some of our legacy solutions or some of our boards that don't have as many fan headers or don't offer as advanced fan control. So this is a nice plus in terms of being able to control this. This is also where you would make the adjustment to the LED to the top 200mm fan. Moving down here to the bottom, We have integrated rubber grommets and slide-through holes here for any type of water cooling configuration. So maybe if you were to use something like a Coolant's Exos, and you'd maybe have that here on the top, or whether you had an integrated pump and you need to reroute the cable, these are integrated directly here. So it's a nice option. And then lastly, of course, we have the mount for the PSU, so very straightforward in that regard. So let's go ahead and jump over to the next slide. So now we're actually on the opposite side of the chassis, and we can see something that's actually very unique. It's really the only chassis on the market that I've seen that is actively implementing a solution like this. But what we can see right here is actually a cutout for a 120mm fan. Now the great thing about this is that this actually gives you the opportunity to actually directly cool a part of the board that not a lot of users conscientiously think about, and is even more critical actually for some of the newer platforms like X79. So what we're going to do right here is actually we're going to pull out our X79 board. And we can see right here we actually have, for instance, our P9 X79 Deluxe board. We can see actually on the back here we have our VRM assembly, and the VRM assembly includes a lot of core components such as your MOSFETs, your drivers, and your chokes. And the MOSFETs and the drivers were actually underneath this actually plate right here are generally the hottest running part of the VRM assembly. So the more cooling that you can supply to them, the better the overall stability of the platform will be. And this is a great option because essentially we can take one of these fans, and if we were to take this off, we can see that we'll be able to mount one of these and then actually blow directly on that part of the board. And I'll tell you, in our internal analysis, we find that especially for users that are looking at higher level overclocks, generally between about 4.7 and above, having this type of option can really help to extend the stability as well as the headroom for your overclocking performance. So we would go ahead and take the fan and have it be mounted as so, and you'd be good to go. So it's a great option in terms of what the 1100 is providing to us in terms of additional airflow. One word of note is that because there aren't any type of like rubber grommets or anything like this, I would generally recommend some type of silicone or rubber grommet threading so that you could go ahead and run the actual fan through this point so that you could minimize on any type of vibration that might occur directly on the back panel, because if not, if this is running at a higher RPM, you might get a little bit of noise, so just keep that in mind. Okay, we've gone ahead and taken a look at the external overview. We're now going to jump into some of the installation options. So first and foremost, we're back over to the front end of the chassis, and we're going to take a look actually at the toolless installation option that we have for the 5 1/4 bay. So we can see right here that we actually have our 5 1/4 device. So we have a ASUS BD writer, and we're going to go ahead and actually install this into our chassis. So we've gone ahead and popped out the actual front bay, and we're just going to go ahead and slide this into place and listen for the click, and that's it. So very easy, seamless process. Now we're going to go ahead and actually take a look at the inside and see actually some of the aspects of installation that we have here. So we've gone ahead and now gone into the inside, and we can see here this is actually the retention mechanism that they have in place that allows it to be toolless. Now you do actually still have the option that if you want to affix screws at this point to make it a permanent installation, you have that ability available to you. So you can go ahead, put in 2 screws. There are also 2 screw options on the other side as well. Now for you guys that want to see how you would actually remove it, now we're going to actually have to go ahead and pull up. This is the actual release portion for the retention mechanism. So we need to go ahead and pull this up and then push out, and we can see here that the ODD actually comes out. From there, if you want to go ahead and put back in, just push back, locks it into place. Very simple process. Okay, so we've covered the front. We're now taking a look at some of the installation and unique options that we have here on the inside of the chassis. And first and foremost, as we previously noted, we have the 6 expansion bays for any type of hard drives. These would be supporting your standard 3 1/4 inch hard drives that we have here. And included with the actual accessory box are the actual toolless installation options. So what we're going to do is crack this guy open quickly here. Grab actually these. This accessory box contains these as well as some cable ties and all the screws required for mounting your hardware. Set that off to the side here. And we're going to go ahead and take our Western Digital 2 terabyte black drive here and pretty much just affix these. We can see it's a very easy process. There's the actual retention threads. Get those into the screws, slots, fix those, and then from there we're just going to pretty much slide this into place and listen for the click. So a very easy installation process, and as you see, you have essentially 6 of those available, so you can really set up the system for a high level of storage capacity. Now, for you guys that are interested in, of course, higher levels of performance with SSDs, for instance, here we have Kingston's HyperX 120 gigabyte SATA 6G SSD. This would go great with like one of our X79 or P67, Z68 boards, and we're going to go ahead and actually show you here the quick installation process. Right here at the top, you actually have 2 slots for 2 SSDs, so great for either a single SSD or a RAID configuration. Now, of course, the options that we noted before with an actual 2.5-inch adapter, you could still mount an SSD actually into these bays and even have more expansion. But for default, just quick installation, all we're going to have to do is take this drive, slide it into place, and that's it. So really simple in terms of that. So moving away from here in terms of our storage expansion options, we're going to go ahead and move on to the inside of the chassis and take a look at actually USB 3 connectivity. Now, we talked about in the front of the chassis it's supporting 2 USB 3 ports, and this is actually done now via the new implementation of the header for USB 3. So if we actually take a look here with all the front lead cables that are offered, we actually have a front USB 3 header, and this actually works with pretty much any generation of our front USB 3 enabled motherboards. So whether it's X79, Z68, these all support that. So here we have actually a deluxe motherboard, X79, that you see has the front USB 3 header. All we would need to do is plug that into place, and you would have your front USB 3 enabled, and no loopback cables required. So it's really nice and easy. Now with the 1100, a large amount of the focus is actually on airflow and really giving you an advanced level of configuration parameters available. So as we noted, we actually have a total of 7. We have 1 fan here, we have support for 2 fans here in the front, another 2 fans here, and then another 120 millimeter here. Now the great thing is that they've made this also a toolless option in terms of fan installation for these 2 guys here. So we actually see that we have the 2 retention clips that will allow us to hold our 120 millimeter fan into place. So what we're going to do is grab our Antec Pro Series 120 fan here, and we're essentially just going to go ahead and slide this in. So there's 2 kind of threads to allow you to guide the actual fan, and once you slide those into place, that's all that's required, and essentially it locks the fan in. So it's a very simple, easy install process. And directly below it, you would see that there's an option for another 120 millimeter fan. So this really allows you to bring even more airflow in, especially if you're going to have maybe a high performance GPU configuration where you're taking advantage of 2-way, 3-way, 4-way GPUs, and you want to bring more air directly across the actual board as well as the GPUs. Now, the other aspect, speaking of GPUs, as we can see, is length in terms of graphics card support. Antec has done a great job here in terms of giving you a lot of real estate to being able to support long graphics cards. Now, the majority of graphics cards on the market right now are generally going to be somewhere about 9 to maybe 10.5 inches, but we can see even here with our flagship Mars II graphics cards, which is essentially 2 GTX 580s on a single board, we would still have the ability to go ahead and have this fit inside the chassis, even with the 120 millimeter fan installed. So we can see that we still have more than enough clearance for even the largest graphics cards on the market. Now, moving away from there, we can see that we have some unique options here. So these are great. We can see that we've got rubber grommets that are encasing these areas so that you essentially, as you're threading your cables through, you're not going to be thrashing and scratching the inside of the chassis, which is a great option. But also, they're really located at great points in terms of the chassis to allow you to have flexibility that once you put the power supply in, you're going to be able to thread these through to be able to have a clean and tight cable management. And as we can also see here at the top, they've given us a lot of flexibility at actually giving you cutouts at the top to allow you to thread the EPS connector. The EPS connector, if we reference our board again, is the 8-pin connector. Sometimes it's difficult depending on the motherboard position. This connector could be in this location or it could also be in this location. That being said, Antec has given you essentially a cutout for both so that you have the ability to thread the cable there ideally. In addition to that, we have a large CPU cutout. This is great for older platforms that require complicated, let's say, backplates or heatsink assemblies, where you're going to want access to it so that you can essentially have the motherboard installed, but still be able to access the backplate installed with actually removing the entire motherboard to put that on. So it's a nice installation option. So lastly, we can see here, we have the option to go ahead and put in our power supply. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So here we've got our Antec High Current Pro 1200 watt. And we're essentially going to mount that into place. It's very simple. You can see that there's a support guide in place, and from there we would essentially go ahead and run these cables through. And we're just going to go ahead and take, for instance, this actually large 24-pin cable, and we're going to route this through so that we can actually show you some of the spacing options that are available on the back of the chassis. Okay, so now that we've covered the inside, we're going to go ahead and actually look at the backside. Now, pretty much we covered all the key items in terms of unique installation points when we first actually outlined the back of the chassis. But going back actually to the fan control, we noted that there was actually some functionality here that you could have controlling the fan. I noted there was an embedded fan controller. Now that we actually have the power supply installed, we can actually show you that there's an option for installation as well that you're going to need to consider. So if we actually turn back inside, located up here in the actual top right hand side of the chassis is an actually integrated fan controller that gives you 4 fan headers, and this will allow you to go ahead and take 4 3-pin fan headers, run them directly to it so that you have more compact and clean cable ties as well as go ahead and be powered directly. Now on our series of motherboards like our X79 series, all of them feature 6 4-pin PWM fan headers, so this isn't necessarily required, but for some of our legacy solutions or more basic boards that don't have as advanced fan controls or as many fan headers, this can still be a great valuable option. Now one point that you are going to need to keep in mind is that a 4-pin Molex is required to go ahead and power all these headers. So as we can see here, we have our PSU installed and we've gone ahead and taken one of these leads, and what you would have to do is actually get in there and plug into that so that we could go ahead and actively supply power to all of those. So keep that in mind in terms of having advanced fan control support integrated from this fan controller. Now we're taking a look at the last side, and we're taking a look at some of the installation benefits that we have here. And really the key area that Antec is focused on is, one, is giving us ventilation, of course, with the honeycomb mesh that we have available here, so that airflow that's being brought in through the potentially installed back 120mm fan can exhaust through here, but as well as actually they've given us a lot of open spacing, so up to 36mm is what they're allowing for, and this gives us a lot of flexibility at being able to take your PSU cables as well as any other cables that you might be feeding through any one of these inserts over here to the actual left as well as here on the bottom, and then putting them in place. So as an example here, we're going to take pretty much the largest one that you have, which is your PSU cable, and we're going to have that installed there, and you can see that you're comfortably fitting that in there. Now when we go ahead and look at our panel of course has that option for that 120mm fan. As we noted, if it was installed here, the airflow can exit the case due to the honeycomb design here that we have exposed on the back, but also you can see here that actually they're giving us additional spacing so that the cables aren't bunched up and pressing up against here, so that's great. So from here, all we're going to do is we're just going to angle this in, and from there pretty much pop that into place and we're good to go. And we can see that there's overall no issues in regards to the installation of the chassis. So that gives us a little bit of an overview and some of the detailing on some of the unique points that we have here on the actual Antec 1100 chassis. As always, if you guys have any questions or comments or feedback, make sure to drop them here on the YouTube page or hit us up on any of our social media channels like Twitter or Facebook. Thank you.